I want to just go straight to the Q&A, so I want to welcome One9 and Erik Parker.
First off, we want to thank Nighthawk Cinema. This is it's very important for independent film to have a place to showcase. And Tribeca as well.
Happy to have you. Of course, this is incredible. So I want to, before we go to the audience, personally for me, like, in terms of Nas, I knew who he was and the inspiration that led to who he is and what he paved the way for, but I wasn't that open to his background. So as a filmmaker, number one, how did you get to break through to him and kind of follow him and get this incredible access that you have? And number two, how did you open it up to those people that might not be that aware of Nas's influence in the music industry?
I mean, the first part of that was we grew up in hip hop, Erik and I. So myself, I was a street artist, graffiti artist, and Erik grew up as a writer. Also was a rapper early on. So, but
don't tell nobody that.
but really just communication with Nas was more about just talking about growing up in the culture, and he understood that. He understood that we were coming from the inside out, and it wasn't from the outside in. And so, like, with him, it was more about, will you be able to do justice to this story? And we came with something that we felt, early on that we showed him rough cuts, and he connected like right off the bat. But there's longer stories to that, but I mean, I'll leave it at that for now.
To add on to that, when we started, it was like 10 years ago we started, and we started as fans. So it wasn't, as what One9 was saying, from the inside out perspective. And when we first began, Nas didn't let us shoot him. So we were just shooting, Pete Rock, whoever else. People who make Illmatic, one thing about them, the people who were involved in Illmatic, other than Nas at the time, the other people love talking about Illmatic. Like, it doesn't matter, like Faith Newman, they just were so happy to be a part of it. They love talking about it. But 10 years ago, Nas wasn't one of those people. He was still making records. He was still, like, trying to keep pushing forward. And he always was a reclusive type artist. He didn't always open up to people. But over the years, he watched us, we were kind of in the back of his mind. People kept coming to him and telling him, these guys are still working on this project. We went through different managers, and we never stopped. So he, at some point, he realized, just as we did, that the story was bigger than any one of us, So I think that appealed to him.
So, outside of that, you get access to Nas, you have this treasure trove of archival and people just chomping at the bit to participate. How do you get funding for it? As filmmakers, what's your trajectory in navigating, funds, financiers, people that will, family members? What's your end goal? How do you strategize?
Well, first off, early on, we knew that it was just an idea, right? So Erik had the idea to make at the time it was 2004. He's like, let's do the 10-year anniversary of Illmatic. And we're first-time filmmakers, so we thought we can do it in 1 year.
It's easy, yeah.
It's easy. Let's knock it out. So he got access to Olu Dara, right? The very first interview we did. And Olu really was able to shape a lot of the film. At least from us, it wasn't just a music doc. At that point, 2004, we were looking at just doing a DVD, a music DVD at that. And so Olu really shaped, he really came with, listen, he dropped 3 hours of generation history. And we left there knowing that, we can't just do a music DVD, we gotta do something different. So we did this out of pocket for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, right? 6, 7. But, it was just, it was a part-time project off, And so, we showed Nas a couple clips here and there. It wasn't really that serious at the time. We were like, we missed the 10-year anniversary, we knew that, so we just like, all right, we'll pick it up But it came to a point where we sent the trailer out to. I was looking for a DP. I sent it to this guy named Bradford Young, a very talented, extremely talented director of photography. He shot Pariah, Mother George.
Nobody Saints, right?
Yeah, I mean, just incredible, right? And he sent it to a friend of his that got to the Soros Foundation. That guy called a guy from the Ford Foundation, and that happened to be Orlando Bagwell, which, you know, those of you who don't know, he directed Eyes on the Prize. Amazing, just, you know, strong rebel, like, but he was in the system. He was in Ford. He was director of Just Films. So he called us and said, you know, I'd like to do something. So he gave us a research grant, and, you know, we took that, and we were like, oh, 50, you know, it was a certain amount of money, and we were like, oh, we could finish the film, but little did we know it's not enough.
Yeah.
Right? So from that, we were able to contact Nas. We did a couple more interviews, and then he gave us a production grant, and that's when we knew it was real. So at that point, we were like 7 years in, but off and on part-time. So at that point, we realized that we can quit our jobs and just, you know, finish something that we believed in. And then at that point, we also showed Nas some footage. You know, but there's a longer story to that. But I know you got more questions, so I'll let you brief.
We can. So I'll open it up, and I have more questions, but it'd be great to hear from the audience if people have. Nobody.
Let's go. I mean, I'll just keep going then.
So let's
keep
keep going.
right there.
Oh, here we go.
So this was the soundtrack of our lives in the 90s. So each of you, favorite song and a defining moment when you heard it that just changed the color and the scenery, everything just changed in front of your eye.
You want to start with that?
Yeah, I can start. Before we started this project, I always like Life's a Bitch, you know. I always loved that record because both AZ's verse to me was so honest and it was powerful. And then Nas's verse when he says, I woke up early on my born day, I'm 20, it's a blessing. The essence of adolescence leave my body now fresh. And it just made me, and then he had another line on that verse, which is probably my favorite line on the album. So I switched my motto. Instead of saying, fuck tomorrow, that buck that bought the bottle could have struck the lotto. And I always felt, wow, that's powerful. This dude is saying something that's so full of hope, which is what Q-Tip said here. So much hope was in those lines, you know. I switched my motto. Instead of saying, fuck tomorrow, that buck that bought the bottle could have struck the lotto. So, I mean, he's putting it in my terms, but it's still high poetry and it's inspirational at the same time. But after doing the film, there's a new, I have a new song that really hit me even harder. And you could probably all guess which one it is. And that's One Love. It always was powerful to me because everybody knows somebody who's affected by, you know, the prison system and, you know, how it really does destroy families and it does destroy generations that come after the individual who was locked up. So after this film, you know, that One Love record, each line, the way Q-Tip breaks it down, hits me harder and stronger each time. And just to back up just a little bit behind the scenes stuff, that scene where Nas is pointing out all of his friends, I mean, Jungle's pointing them out, but, you know, and Nas is talking about, like, his people who are no longer here. That scene, you know, anybody can relate to that. When we talked to Q-Tip, he just ultimately, in that interview, he just pulled out his phone and pulled up a picture on his phone and was like, these are my homeboys from back in the day. Young Q-Tip, his boys, his friends, and he's like, this one's in jail, this one's dead. Man, he's not here anymore. He's gone. Man, it's real. It is real. I mean, this is Q-Tip talking. I mean, it's funny to hear his voice, but it really was a serious poignant moment because anybody we interviewed could have pulled out their phone, and if they had Facebook and been tagged enough with the Throwback Thursdays, could have looked at their phone and did that. And that's how powerful that is. And that song now, it has like, you know, it always had that deep meaning, but because it's never been matched, a lot of people have talked about waking up early on a born day since. A lot of people said we were all beginners in the hood as 5%ers, You know, some people always, you know, since then people have glommed onto that and, you know, elevated, but no one has still to this day been as honest and poignant and powerful as that One Love.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. I mean, one way we looked at the film, I think that connected to Nas as well, was we didn't want to take it from a VH1 music perspective. We didn't want to just do music. We realized this was deeper. We wanted to look at the issues, the culture, you know, the economics. So we looked at New York State of Mind, that song, right? And we looked at, where does Queensbridge come from? You know, how does housing get here? Like, we didn't know, right? So we interviewed Cornel West. He breaks a lot down. I mean, it's crazy. A lot. I mean, what we have is just a little bit of what he offers. Then we looked at Life's a Bitch, and we looked at, well, what happened to the family, right? Roxanne talks about it. And it's interesting to see how things got broken apart. Then we looked at World Is Yours. We looked at One Love. We looked at Prisons. And we looked at each song and related to a theme that's going on, you know, really in the community. So for us, it was more important that we expressed what this means to a greater whole. You know, Illmatic is something that musically just, you know, it transcends generations. It's part of what we grew up with. But what's it really mean to the Joneses and to, like, people who relate to this outside of just the music? So we really wanted to you know, express the issues, and Nas felt that. He says, like, you know, this is not like a typical music doc. It's not even a music doc, really. It could transcend that. So that we came about it with that approach. I think that's what related to him. So, but to answer your question, I guess it would be One Love in a sense, but really they all have so much more meaning now that we know the backstory, you know, the books he read, you know, what tore the family up, you know. So that in a sense, that's kind of what we went about. You know.
Thank you.
All right. One of the things I was curious about was the relationship between Jungle and Nas, because it feels like Jungle carries a lot. You know, and I feel like you captured a lot of that. And I feel like there's a way in which he actually probably holds Nas and keeps him honest and like true. I know Nas says in his own way, he keeps himself true. But I feel like Jungle's like there. He's present in that place that they came up with, and he really feels like part of his role is to hold that, to keep Nas accountable. But I don't know. I'm just curious about that relationship.
You want to tap that?
You picked up on something that was really important for One9 and I making this film, is to not just celebrate Nas as a rapper, but to really put it in perspective, because everybody's not a genius like Nas. Most of us are jungles in this world. And their relationship now, you could tell, you know, without Jungle, there wouldn't be a Nas. And that's one of the points that we wanted to make sure that you come away with this, from this film, knowing, is that Nas doesn't come out of a vacuum. And Illmatic doesn't happen just out of the thin air. You know, it's built over time and generations with great support from communities, from villages, from people, from heroes even that you'll never hear of. And one of those people is Jungle. Now you know him because we put him in the documentary, and he knows Nas. You know, he's close with Nas. But people like Jungle, there are so many stories of people who protected Nas, so to speak, meaning they recognized something in him and wouldn't let him go off track and destroy his life. These stories that go on behind the scenes where someone else might lay their life down or sacrifice their freedom so that Nas would be able to reach us all here today. And those happen all across, you know, Queensbridges and everybody's, you know, neighborhood across the country. But to ask more specific, Nas and Jungle are really close. I think Jungle sees their lives as them two are all they got. Actually, it's something he actually said to us. You know, this is, you know, we're all we really got. You know, some parts that we left out of the film about their relationship that we couldn't get into. But Jungle and Nas are really close. You know, their mother passed away. Their father was in and out of their lives. He always was kind of, you know, somewhat around and supportive, but he always wasn't there. Those two guys had each other. Jungle had Nas's back and Nas had Jungle's back. So I think, you know, it still shows today. Even today, Jungle's like, in that interview that you saw with Jungle, where he's sitting down, he's like, you know, me and him, you know, no matter out of everybody, you know, we're all we got. And he said that including his family, you know.
I want to say, first of all, I want to say congratulations for being able to set a goal, you know, to complete something and able to actually make that happen and see it on a big stage. And, you know, it's probably going to grow. We don't know where it's going to go at this point, but, you know, it set out to be an idea, and now you guys are able to see it on this stage. But you guys interview so many people, hours of interviews. How do you figure out what to include, shave it down, you know, to make it an hour and a half when you've been interviewing people for an hour, 2-3 hours? You know, I'm sure there's so many good points and good stories that you have to leave out of it. Like, what do you do with that extra footage, and like, you know, like, how do you get it to be just one movie?
Well, we could both answer that, but the first part, thank you, and the second part also, beyond where's it going? October, we got a global release, so it's gonna go theatrical. Nas is gonna do concert performances with the film. Outside of that, we have our associate producer, Martha Diaz is here. She's putting education curriculum with the film, so it's gonna be in high schools, colleges, and so forth. And for us, you know, growing up in hip hop, that's so important, because it's not just a hip hop story; it's a family story. So it's a cultural story. So the second part is, how do we shape it down? I think I tapped into that a little bit earlier. With just, we looked at New York State of Mind, Life's a Bitch, One Love, and World Is Yours, and we looked at themes and what they touched upon: prisons, family, culture, housing, and stripped away from there. Because there's so much. I mean, we could go on. This could be a 3-hour movie. But what we're going to do is we're going to release teasers, and we want to put some of the uncut footage, interviews of Cornell, Pete Rock, Premier, all of them, like, just uncut, just release it out, because people need to hear that. I mean, it's important. It's important. Just, you'll realize that they talk about issues that are so more, like Q-Tip talked about, so bigger than just hip-hop. They look at socioeconomic issues, but they relate it to the music. And those things are important to hear.
I'd like to thank you, too. Thank you. I want to talk about the last part of that. How did you get down the film to, what is it, 74 minutes, right? It's 74 minutes, when each interview was longer than that. Each interview that we did was longer than that, much longer than that. And, you know, when we were in Paris, it's funny, because when we were in Paris, we showed the film in Paris like 2 weeks ago. And that's not just a humble brag, I'm going somewhere with that. So, when we were there, this guy asked a question, and then it was translated to us, because, you know, we were doing this type of thing. And there was a translator, because One9 and I both don't speak French. But, so the guy asked this question, he's real passionate, and then somebody in English said, great fucking question, great fucking question. And the translator says to us, they want to know, how come there's not more DJ Premier in the film? So we say, great fucking question. But the reality is, the answer is really difficult. And we could say that about almost every single person. How come there's not more of that person? How come there's no Akinelli? How come there's no Kool G Rap? How come there's no Rakim? How come there's, you know, the absence can go on. We can go on and on about the absences. What we try to do is to remain loyal to the story, you know, and this story really is about something greater than just the making of the music. To answer your premiere question, by the way, that guy's premiere question in Paris, we worked with the access we had with DJ Premier. But beyond that, what we try to do is stay very loyal to a storyline and a story arc, without getting too muddied down in details that could derail the story. As Illmatic fans, many of you probably are Illmatic fans, and people who come to see this film, who are Illmatic fans, usually come expecting something much different than they see. They expect the DVD that we were going to make 10 years ago, which was the making of Illmatic. And you come away with a story about young black men coming of age in the 1990s. So once we kept in line, that was our storyline, to take away, to use Illmatic to get at the issues that these boys were coming into as they were coming of age, becoming men, and the forces that were working against them, and the forces that were working for them. Once we kept that as the thread, then we kind of use that as a basis to say, okay, in, out, in, you know, that sort of thing.
I have one question. It's kind of cliche and conventional, but since you are first-time filmmakers, what kind of words of wisdom, advice you can give to other artists, whether it's filmmakers, whether it's multimedia artists, who can see kind of past what the project is? Like in your case, 10 years ago, you realized this is bigger than this. This is kind of long-term project. So what kind of advice would you give filmmakers who are undertaking a project that might be bigger than they are, and they need to stick to it, or figure out what the route is?
I'm sure One9 has plenty to say about that. I'll be quick and get out of the way. From my own perspective, it's to find a project that you're very passionate about, and then find people who share your passion. And that's what One9 did. He was one who we shared the same passion. And some people who offer skills that you might not have. One9 was a visual artist. He was a great editor. So he knew how to look at, while we both were first-time filmmakers, my background is journalism, but One9 actually worked in the medium of TV and then also visual art. So those two things together were really helpful in building this film that we put together. So I would say find people to share your passion, have a film that's worthy of, that you're passionate about. And if the story is much bigger than yourself, always put the story first and get out of the way of it.
You just really summed it up. Just to add to that, it's never about the money. Never about the money. That it's gonna come eventually if it does. But when you wake up, you gotta love waking up and doing this. We spent 10 years off and on. Yeah, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. But then it has to be bigger than you, like what Erik was saying. It has to be bigger than what you're about. It has to be like this for us. And even for Nas, he was like, this is really just about me. This is bigger than me. And that to me meant everything. I was like, all right, then we gotta finish. And that was it. That's really what it's about. It's like, forget the money, know you love it, and everything else is gonna fall in place.
Good words to end by. So, oh really? Oh, even better. I know this guy.
Awesome. Thank you. I noticed in the scene where you guys had other artists talking about how Illmatic was such an influence to them. Out of modern rappers, you included Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. Was there a particular reason why you guys chose those two artists as opposed to anyone else? Because Illmatic has quite influenced every hip hop artist there is out today.
We could both answer that, but we wanted someone from a younger generation. Nas spoke highly about both of them. He really felt that J. Cole and Kendrick were ones that for him is someone he can respect, and for us, and especially Erik Badu, you saw in the film as well. There were so many more people we reached out to, but for the sake of time, but yeah, it was
That's great. This guy. I know you've been working on this project for a few years, but how did completing this project change both of y'all?
that's a good question.
I just would say it made me more poor. One, there were times when we worked on this project and we didn't have money, to pay ourselves, but we made sure we, try to make sure we're able to pay others who work for us. But beyond that, I mean, I think ultimately, I mean, you change. I would try to reflect it with Nas's life too. I'll start with that. 10 years ago when we first started, I interviewed Nas. I used to work at the Source magazine many years ago, and I was a music editor. I interviewed Nas during that beef with Jay-Z. It was the height of that beef, right? And Nas, this was 10 years ago, I think. No, this was longer than that. This is 2000. This is year 2000, around there.
14 years ago.
Yeah. And Nas was still, you know, while he was always advanced, you know, he was always smart, but he was always guarded, you know. He was always guarded as an interviewer with his one-word answers, or, you know, he's like, word, that's true, cool. And that's all you would get out of him, you know, and reporters and people, you know, my colleagues would be confounded by this dude because, you know, you listen to his lyrics, he's so profound, he's prolific, and then when you ask him the question, all you get is a word, cool. And but that interview, he was still like that I did, like in 2000, you know. He opened up probably for the first time during that interview where he actually said a lot of words, you know. And that was probably because he was going through a transition in his career. 10 years later, well, 14 years later, you could see that this was, by the way, that was around the time when everything he had done was being compared to Illmatic. So he wasn't always very happy to talk about Illmatic in that same way. Like, people were always talking about, oh, you made Illmatic. And he's like, but I just have an album out now, you know. Now that he's 40 years old, maybe over 40 years old now, he has grown to understand the significance of that piece of work made by this teenage kid in Queensbridge Projects, who happened to have been him. And I think the growth is for him to get out of his own way and to be able to reflect and have a great understanding of what that piece of art meant to the world, to others like myself, like One9, who are not even from Queensbridge, I'm not even from New York, but that story spoke to me where I was from. So I mean, I think what I was able to do with this project, at least, is to be able to have some context and some space between the time, 1994 when it came out, when I was a kid like Nas, to 2014 when we put this album out. I mean, we put this film together, finally finished this film, and able to really understand what it meant. 20 years is considered something of a generation. And now we can really take some stock and understand what had happened in that generation, to us, you know. So anyway, I can only explain how I'm able to look back at that landscape and, you know, get meaning from it. I mean, I don't have any great personal, you know, growth, you know, but that's that.
I would say, to answer that, pretty simple. When we started the film, I had a job, full-time job, corporate America. Some of you I work with in here. You know, it's comfortable, 401k, all of that. But once I quit, I'm going to just tell you, I'm never going back. I'm never going to have a boss. I'm never going back to corporate world. I realize that, you know, you can do what you love. You know, there's options out there. Tribeca Films, Ford Foundation. I mean, whatever you want to do, you can just do it. You don't need to go, you don't need a boss, man. Fuck that. That's it.
It's kind of more of a comment than a question. I really want to say thank you. You know, when Illmatic came out, you know, I was 18, 19, and it meant so much still. And the visuals and the story kind of, you know, complement it very nicely. It's well done. Like any fan of Nas and of the album, obviously, I think will have that same appreciation. It's really well done. And I think the fact that you're tackling the education aspect will inspire the younger generation of hip-hop. There's a lot of young kids that live in my neighborhood who've never heard Illmatic. And I always get jealous and tell them, listen to it for the first time, because that feeling you get when you first hear it, like if you're a hip-hop head, it's just so different. And you know, from bridging the gap from the old school, it's just so different. And hearing it from the first time, it makes me kind of envious, because I wish I could have heard it again from that first time. And the story and the background to it it's just well done. Thank you. It was really nice. You know, excellent job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We got drinks.
I think it was great. If you had to do it again, how would you approach it? Would you approach it differently in terms of putting it together?
What's up, Anissa? We wouldn't have taken 10 years knowing there is, well, we realized though there is options out there to get money. We really went Tribeca All Access. Martha Diaz, thank you for introducing us to them initially. There is resources that we know now, and really everyone in here, if you're looking to make a film, look at Tribeca, look at the Ford Foundation, look at Firelight Media, look at all these resources that are out there that really support independent film. Look at Nighthawk. This is a place you can show your film. I mean, this is really like, for us, it's a learning experience. So, you know, we know now if whatever's next, we can do it faster, quicker, smarter. And look at your resources. There's stuff out here. Go to like whatever events are being shown, films are being shown, and talk to people. I mean, it's out here for us. We didn't know about All Access. I mean, they were great. They really gave us opportunities to talk to distributors, learn the business of it, learn, you know, storytelling. I mean, they gave us a lot of great insight. Jane Rosenthal, the whole Tribeca Film Festival is just an incredible experience. You should all go. I mean, see films that you would never see before. You know, just see all of it. I mean, you'll learn so much about film and culture that it's a great, you know, thing to have that we're privy to in this sense. So, yeah, I mean, looking back, we would just do it. You know, now we know, but you know, I think we're gonna spread the word about what's out there. You know.
That's great.
With that being said, so what's next for you guys? What's next up?
The producer answers that question.
This is what's next is to get, you know, everybody here that saw this tonight to tell 10 people to see it when it comes out in October. Well, really, we absolutely want the film to be, you know, to be well received in the theaters, you know. So the thing about, let me just back up and keep it 100% real. You know, the thing about making a film is it's never done. So even now we're not finished. This film is done, but there's so many other things that have to be done before the film is done. And it's probably not done until it gets out of theaters. But then, even then, we have other mechanisms. We talked about what Martha Diaz is working on. I think she stepped out. But the education aspect of it and the community outreach so that it can live beyond the theaters and actually be used as a tool to help, you know, teach young people that it can be screened in prisons. I mean, the project has to be, and youth facilities, the project has to be bigger than just the theaters. So our push, though, is to make it big enough in the theater so that those legs can actually, you know, take off. But if you're talking about another project, you know, we talk about this all the time because people always ask that question. It's really difficult to say. We started this 10 years ago because we were passionate about it, about making this film about an album that we loved. And so you can imagine that knowing that something can take 10 years, once you finish one, you don't just jump into the next thing.
Right.
So with that, I mean, that's ultimately the answer. You know, whatever happens, I'm sure we'll choose carefully whether we're doing it together or separate projects, whether we're making films or cookbooks, you know, whatever it is. Why you laugh at cookbooks? Whatever it is, though, we'll see, you know.
That's what's up.
Thank you. Yep. One more. Squeeze it in.
Also wanted to say thank you. It was beautifully done. I think Jungle might have his own documentary in him. Like it seemed like he had so much pain in his eyes, and you can tell that he was drinking while he was doing those interviews, and we saw him smoking marijuana. And it just seemed like it was painful for him to say a lot of those things, which I could understand. It sounded very painful, like his experience talking about
I'm sure One9 has lots to say about Jungle and his position in the film, because we talk about it all the time. In particular, Jungle, you know, when people watch the film, they come away with understanding more about Nas through Jungle than necessarily through Nas himself. You know, there's so much that we cut out of the film about Jungle, precisely for the reasons that you mentioned, because he's very charismatic. He, you know, you can get caught up in his story, you know. I'm sure he's got a reality show coming out eventually. I don't know. But, you know, he told us a lot of things that didn't make, you know, there's the moments that are in here are really powerful when he's telling his, it says a lot. There's so much that we think that Jungle tells us that, you know, is not spelled out directly. But if you read between the lines, you know, it's really clear. When he's saying, he tells his mom, "Mom, why didn't we move?" You know, you can imagine this kid was 13 years old. He gets shot, and he sees one of his best friends get killed. And he's asked, the way he put it, I used to tell my mom this shit. Why didn't we move? One thing, you look at how honest he is, the way he speaks, you know. I used to tell my mom this shit. Why didn't we move? And you can imagine how heavy that was for him. But just imagine how heavy it was for his mom. Maybe she couldn't move, you know. So it makes it even deeper. You know, everybody don't have the same opportunities to just say, oh, okay, we'll just go, oh, where do you want to move, Jungle? I mean, Jabari, where should we go? You know, let's go to, you know, Jersey or what have you. Everybody doesn't have those same opportunities. And the film, if you look at it, there's a lot of subtext throughout that you can dissect. And Jungle offers a lot of that, but he's a little bit more forward with it. But even when I look at the meeting between Messiah, you know, when Nas comes back to his block, and then there's Messiah, and he's like, you know, you're not little Messiah no more. He's like, yeah, you big, I'm not little Messiah no more. He's like, yeah, you big Messiah now. And he's talking about he just came home. You know, he just came back from jail, now he's big Messiah. And you're looking at this conversation that they're having, and it's playing out in front of us, but there's so much going on under there. This dude used to be a little kid. He went away to jail, wherever he went, he came back. Now he's big Messiah. You know, and he's on the block, and Nas is like, well, welcome back, you know, welcome home, you know, as he says, welcome home, my nigga, and then they're happy to see each other, you know. I mean, there's so much of that going on, and I think Jungle offers a lot of that, you know, for us.
I mean, just to add on to that, Jungle was the hardest person for us to get to. And once we did, he had so much to say. He needed this. After the movie, he came up to us and said, you know, this is the best night of my life. I needed this. Thank you. It was tough. It was tough for him. I saw him. We was watching him after the premiere at the Beacon. He runs over to his father, Oludara, who was there, and he hugs him. And I could tell it was an emotional moment for them. I hope no one exploits him. I don't want to see a TV show about this. Right? He's not that guy. I don't want to see him out there like that. This is personal for him and Nas. And they protect each other about that. And I'm hoping, I mean, we're not going to do it, but I hope, you know, we're going to put more of him, maybe some teasers or something that he just reveals more of the true, honest, what he's about. But it's not really about, for, you know, making money off of an emotion. It's more about, if anything, we like to get him to go talk to the, when we screen at Rikers, we want him to come. You know what I mean? It's something that fits. He wants to do that. Yeah. He wants to do, and that's what it's about for him. It's like, it's about honest feelings. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot more we can say, but we'll just keep it simple.
Trick now. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. Tell your friends, VOD, Theatrical, early October. Thanks for One9 and Parker.
Thank you, Trout.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
Good.
Yeah.
You look such a smiley, so that must be why.
I'm supposed to be knowing Anthony was in this one.
Oh, good. Yeah, definitely. Well, you look really handsome.
Oh, I think,
Yeah. Really.
It was good to see you.
And good. I'm glad that you did. I'm glad that you did the conversation. I was like, wow. Okay. Until you got me kicking people.
You good? You left something?
Alright,
I didn't, but
Yes, yes.
Josh.
I'm glad you came to say hello and everything.
Josh.
And hope everything you enjoy the rest of your summer. Yeah, yeah. Tell Anthony you saw him.
Only that.
Okay. All right. See you next time. Okay.
You got everything?
You alright?
I kind of like threw out my neck.
Wait, when?
I was lying down on the beach for like 20 minutes, and I got up and I was like,